In the year 1815, the eruption of Mount Tambora claimed the lives of about 71,000 people, and it resulted in harsh changes in the climate. Volcanoes can be dangerous and unpredictable, yet millions of people have lived their entire lives without leaving the ashes of a volcano. This video will cover 10 countries where volcanoes are a constant threat. Number 10. Ecuador. Ecuador is a true volcanic country. The territory encompasses potentially active volcanoes, with some outstanding ones being Cotopaxi, Reventador, and Tungurahua. These volcanoes, however, pose more than a threat to this country since they all stay within a distance of 50 kilometers from areas where destructive eruptions have occurred in the past 2,000 years. Some cities, including most of the central and northern highlands, are found within a 25-kilometer radius of an active volcano whose hazards to the populace cannot be underestimated. Some places, like Quito, the capital, have also been affected by eruptions like Latacunga and Salcedo. It can be said that the dangers of volcanoes in these cities are serious. Its lavas or volcanic mudflows are generally very calamitous. It does not end here, however. The volcanic ash inflicts heavy injury on buildings, crops, livestock, and people's health. Some volcanoes, like Sangay, are known to cause large debris avalanches that can travel very far, even over 60 kilometers away. The volcanic activity risk in Ecuador is therefore always there, and millions continue to be affected by it. Number 9. Guatemala. Volcanoes make the geography of Guatemala interesting. These natural events are resources for the country and attract tourists. However, they also threaten the lives of nearby people. Guatemala is about a third the size of Italy, but has 37 volcanoes. Of these, 22 have been active in the last 10,000 years, and about 10 have erupted in recorded history. Some volcanoes are very dangerous. For example, Pacaya, Santa Maria, and Volcán de Fuego. Looking back, the 2018 eruption of Fuego resulted in nearly 200 deaths and much property damage. Many people live near these volcanoes and are affected most by these disasters. Despite this risk, volcanoes remain key to the country's identity and economy. Number 8. Mexico. Volcanic rocks cover 1/3 of Mexico, and there are around 16 active volcanoes, defined as having had at least one eruption in the last 10,000 years. Not as many as Indonesia or Japan host, but they can still be deadly for people who live close to the volcanoes. Mexico has a slower pace for the movements of its tectonic plates, unlike countries like Indonesia. They have made volcanoes that lie dormant for long periods, and the intervals between eruptions are far apart. But when they do erupt, they keep coming at a deadly pace. In Mexico nowadays, it is just the Popocatépetl and Colima volcanoes that are erupting. The first is located outside Mexico City, which is one of the world's biggest metropolitan areas. Volcán de Fuego de Colima, Colima Volcano of Fire, as it's sometimes called, is currently the most active volcano in the country. Number 7. Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one of the most volcanically active countries in the world, with 59 volcanoes estimated to have been active in the Holocene. The country adopts the characteristics of the East African Rift, being the area under which Ethiopia is found, and so has a high incidence of seismicity and eruptions. Interestingly, more than 46% of the Ethiopian population resides within 100 kilometers of a Holocene volcano, and this makes a large segment vulnerable to eruptions. Corbeti and Aluto volcanoes, among others, have explosive eruptions of around 250 years. Erta Ale is the most active volcano in Ethiopia, active since at least April 2024. From January 2017 until March 2020, the fissure eruptions at Erta Ale produced enormous quantities of lava that covered an area of around 30 square kilometers. Unfortunately, Ethiopia lacks a modern volcano monitoring system despite the dangers posed by its volcanoes. Sometimes, even satellite-based observations are not very accurate in indicating active eruptions. Mechanisms such as insurance and shutdown procedures for vulnerable systems are risk transfer mechanisms that Ethiopia should consider. Number 6. Philippines. The Philippines has 53 active volcanoes and therefore faces a major threat of volcanic eruptions and devastations from them, considering its warm tropical climate and tectonic setting. The country is an archipelago, part of the Western Pacific Ocean, and consists of more than 7,000 islands. It has volcanoes that were formed thousands of years ago through collisions between the Philippine Sea Plate, the Eurasian Plate, and other minor plates. Most of the time, it gets categorized by the country's beautiful beaches, rich heritage, and very diverse landscapes. The country covers about 300,000 square kilometers and is also a popular tourist destination. The Philippines lies at the crossroads of two major tectonic plates, making it most susceptible to both eruptions and earthquakes. Because of the moving plates that skirt along deep trenches on its eastern and western coasts, one can expect frequent natural calamities. Number 5. El Salvador. El Salvador sits on the Central American volcanic arc, part of the Ring of Fire. This location shapes its main geographic feature, volcanoes. The Cocos Plate, pushing under the Caribbean Plate, causes these volcanoes. In the past 10,000 years, El Salvador has seen 20 active volcanoes. San Miguel, the most active, has erupted at least 29 times since 1699. San Salvador, another well-known volcano, has been quiet for over 80 years. Ilopango, however, erupts every year. Besides San Miguel, many volcanoes dot the country. These include Tecapa, San Vicente Chingo, Cerro Singuil, Usulutan, and Laguna Aramuaca, among others. Frequent volcanic eruptions and earthquakes have earned El Salvador the nickname Land of Volcanoes. Number 4. Iceland. Iceland's mid-Atlantic ridge, where tectonic plates meet, is home to most of its 130 volcanoes. Greenland boasts around 30 active volcanoes, with 13 eruptions on record since 874 AD. The deadliest aftermath occurred between 1783 and 1784, claiming an estimated quarter of Iceland's population.
Then we heard DEADLIEST and saw him way up above, running through the trees, screaming the volcanoes exploding in Spanish.
In 2010, Eyjafjallajökull erupted, sending thousands of tons of volcanic ash into the sky. This event brought air travel to a standstill across much of northern Europe for weeks. Iceland's high volcanic activity comes from not just its position above a superimposed hotspot, but also atop the mid-Atlantic ridge. 30 volcanoes have erupted during Holocene times, including one of them, Eldgjár, which laid down more lava at the surface than any other incident in human history. Subsequent eruptions caused significant property damage and took many lives in Iceland, and these events also regularly disrupted global aviation. For this reason, their impact is widespread and not limited to the local area. Number 3. Indonesia. This country has the highest number of active volcanoes, with about 139 of these volcanoes scattered over the country. Indonesia is very much susceptible to volcanic activity because it lies along the Pacific Ring of Fire. Most of the volcanoes are found on the Sunda Arc, which is composed of an 1,800-mile chain where the Indian Ocean Plate has been forced under another tectonic plate. Mount Merapi and Mount Kelud are two of the most active in Indonesia. These two volcanoes cause actual destruction of farmland and tree community life during eruptions, but in some ways are productive, because the ash is responsible for soil enrichment due to eruption material. Some of the largest volcanoes across the globe have truly erupted in Indonesia. One of them is the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815, whose seismic fury made an impact on the world and affected the climate, to the point that 1816 was dubbed the year without summer in Europe. Number 2. Russia. In total, there are 166 volcanoes in Russia, the majority of which are concentrated mainly in the Kamchatka Peninsula, found in the eastern part of Russia. The east of the Kamchatka Peninsula is considered to be the Pacific Ring of Fire, known as a region of intense volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. This area is home to 29 active volcanoes and regularly experiences the eruption of active volcanoes. The highest volcano in Russia, with an elevation of 1,584 FFT at sea level, is Kluchevskaya Sopka. It is also the biggest active volcano in the Northern Hemisphere. One volcano that roused interest is the Bolshaya Udina. Although declared extinct, it surprisingly began to record some seismic activities around it in 2017. Until now, there is no clear consensus on when Bolshaya Udina last erupted. Number 1. The United States of America. Beneath the US lie some 173 volcanoes, most of which are in Alaska, where eruptions are nearly annual events. Plate tectonics explains why so many volcanoes lie in the Northwest and Alaska. Here, the Farallon Plate is refracted under the North American Plate to form conditions conducive to volcanic eruptions. Hawaii is also a significant site of volcanic activity. The most active volcano on Earth, Kilauea in Hawaii, has continuously erupted since 1983 AD. The US has more than 161 active volcanoes spread throughout the country, with most located in the western part. The United States has 18 volcanoes directly considered as very dangerous because of their high activity and proximity to major population areas. Of these highly hazardous volcanoes, 5 belong to Alaska, with Kilauea, Hawaii, being the most dangerous volcano in the United States. This brings us to the end of today's video. Please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for viewing and see you soon.